Yes, a very good evening, everyone. So, let's start with our discussion on part 2 of the Ethics 2024 2025 paper, which is the case study part. So, general studies, the paper 4, the first part of paper 4, I have already taken up that discussion. So, if you have not gone through that discussion, you can go through it. And then comes your paper 4 part 2, which is the case study part. So I would be taking up the case study part now. Okay, now the first case study is this. So let's start with our discussion on this. You can see Vijay was deputy commissioner of a remote district in the hilly northern state of the country. Use this. Vijay was the deputy commissioner of remote district in hilly northern state of a country for the last 2 years. In the month of August, heavy rains lashed the complete state, followed by cloud bursts in the upper reaches of the said district. The damages was very heavy in the complete state, especially in the affected districts. The complete road network and telecommunication was disrupted, and the buildings were damaged extensively. People's houses have been destroyed, and they were forced to stay in open. More than 200 people have been killed, and about 5,000 were badly injured. The civil administration under Vijay got activated and started conducting rescue and relief operations. Temporary shelters, camps, and hospitals were established to provide shelters and medical facilities to the homeless and the injured people. Helicopter services were pressed in for evacuating sick and old people from remote areas. Vijay got a message from his hometown in Kerala that his mother was seriously sick. After 2 days, Vijay received the unfortunate message that his mother had expired. Vijay has no close relatives except one elder sister who was US citizen and was staying there for last several years. In the meantime, the situation in the affected districts deteriorated further due to resumption of heavy rain. After a gap of 5 days, at the same time, continuous messages were coming from his mobile from his hometown to reach at the earliest for performing last rites of his mother. Okay. Now, what are the specific questions? Now, what are the specific questions that have been asked? I hope you have understood the whole case study. Now, if you can see here, there are four questions that are there. First is, what are the options available with Vijay? So the first question that we have to answer here is, what are the options available? Second is, what are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Vijay? Critically evaluate and examine each of those options identified by Vijay. And finally, which of the options do you think would be the most appropriate for Vijay to adopt and why? Okay, so there are 4 questions. Now, this is a 20 marks question, which means every question we will assume that it carries 5 marks. Okay, and we will accordingly, 5 marks, we have to write around 250 words. So around 60 words to 65 words is what we will be writing for each and every answer. Okay, now starting with the very first idea, what are the options that are available? Now in this case, what are the options that are available? Don't look at this. This is repetition. First is, proceed immediately to his hometown to perform the last rights of his mother. That is obviously one option. Second option is to stay in the disaster hit district and continue leading the rescue and relief operation, delegating the responsibility of his mother's last right to someone else. Then seek temporary leave for a short period to attend the funeral and then return quickly to resume duties. Fourth, request higher authorities for temporary appointment of another officer to take charge while he goes home. And the fifth is balance remotely, that is stay in the district but try to coordinate funeral arrangements remotely through trusted people in Kerala. Okay, these are the 5 options that you have. Now, because the question explicitly mentions what are the options, so it's a 5 marks, as I've already told you. So at least 5 to 6 points we would be writing. Okay, so we have written these 5 points. Now the next question that is there, it is related to what? It is related to the ethical dilemmas that is being faced by Vijay. What are the ethical dilemmas that are being faced by Vijay? Now, if you see this very question, what are the ethical dilemmas that Vijay is facing in this very question? Now, there are a few dilemmas which seem to be very, very prominently present here. First of all, personal versus professional duty. Okay, so that is one ethical dilemma which is quite visible. On one hand, he has to attend to immediate personal reasons, personal duties, which is performing the last rites of his mother. No one else is there to replace him. So personal duty is there. Personal duty is there. And here, the professional duty, the official duty that is to be performed here is basically disaster relief, and that too, it's a very critical situation. Okay, so there is professional or personal versus professional duty. Okay, this is one of the dilemmas. When you are writing an ethical dilemma, you don't just have to articulate an ethical dilemma, you also have to explain why. You also have to explain why is there, why is there a ethical dilemma, and this ethical dilemma that you have quoted, why is that an ethical dilemma here? So you will have to explain that. Okay. Second is family responsibility. Family responsibility versus public service. So responsibility to the people versus responsibility to the family. Okay, that is the second ethical dilemma that is there. Come to the third ethical dilemma. What is the third ethical dilemma here? The third ethical dilemma is in right now Vijay is facing what? Right now he's facing a serious emotional distress. Okay, so he is right now in a situation of emotional distress. But what is his duties at this particular point? His duties at this particular point is where he has to take rational decisions. Rational decision making. Now this is a state where he is facing a contradiction here. Why? Because his mother has passed away, so he's facing an emotional distress. There is no one to take care of. There is no one to take care of the mother. And at least the funeral that is there is no one to take care of. But at this particular time, because that is a crisis situation, there is a crisis situation that is at stake. So he also has to do what? He also has to make rational choices. Now this is a state of dilemma here. Another is compassion. compassion versus duty. Now, in this case, we are talking about what? Compassion towards whom? We are talking about compassion towards the mother or the late mother here. Okay. So, compassion versus what? Versus personal duty. So, there is a, professional duty. So, there is duty at stake and there is also compassion, or you can say love. So, love towards mother versus duty towards the state. Okay. Now, you will have to explain this. This is the ethical dilemma that is present. Okay. Now, the third question that is there here is related to what? Related to critically evaluate and examine each of these options identified by Vijay. That means all the options that we have just identified, we have to critically examine that. That means we will look at pros and cons of each and every option that is there. Okay. So first, go immediately to Kerala. Now, in this case, what are the pros? Obviously, there would be moral and religious obligations related to the late mother. So he would be able to fulfill that. He will also, positively speaking, he will also be able to deal with his personal grief. At that time, there would be people around him who are close to him, as well as his mother. There were people who were maybe his distant relative, etc. They would be there. So that would bring to a certain extent there would be some sympathy that would be shown by others towards his personal grief. But what would be the problems here? This would mean that you are trying to leave the duty at a very, very sensitive time. There is a crisis-like situation that has emerged. Okay. Now, you are in the middle of the disaster. There is loss of leadership, crisis, public trust. All these factors can be there. So, because you are leaving a crisis situation midway, you have not resolved it. So, in this state, if you allow this to happen, if you leave that particular, in this case, Vijay leaves in that situation, the public trust that it has on the government, that is something that would be lost. Because there would be people, there would be citizens who would get to know that the person in charge is no more right now in office. That would result into such a grief. Obviously, there would be no such understanding that yes, the individual has lost someone, the mother of the individual died. People are not likely to understand. They would not come to know that. So in this case, the public trust over the government, over the administrative machinery, that would be negatively impacted. Okay. Second option is stay in the district and continue duties. Okay. Now in this case, it is obviously commitment. It shows commitment to public service. And obviously there would be relief operations that would continue. He would be able to save more lives. Okay. But what is the problem here? There would be an emotional burden. Now it would be, it is something which would even affect his capability. At that particular time, his capability may also be affected. Why? Because he is in a state of emotional turmoil. So not necessarily he is in performing in his best capability to be able to resolve this. Okay. So that is basically what is going to happen. So there would be emotional, and it would be seemed that he's neglecting his family duties. Though he's performing his public duties, but there would be a neglect to his family duties. Okay. Then comes seeking a short leave of 2-3 days. What are the pros? It would balance personal and professional life, or personal and professional duties, human side of administration. But what is the problem? This is a disaster hit region. And in a disaster hit region, if you are not there for maybe 2 or 3 days, even a short period of 2 to 3 days may cost the region a lot. So that may be a problem. So there will also be issues related to connectivity. Now, it may so happen that the individual leaves but is not able to return back in the period of 2 to 3 days. That can also happen. There can be managerial issues related to disaster efforts. So if the individual is the one who is coordinating all the disaster efforts, suddenly if the individual is not there, he is the district head, and very likely that will have a negative impact. Okay. Then comes request temporary replacement by higher authorities. Now what will happen? Obviously there would be legitimacy and continuity of administration. So Vijay is not there, but the other individual who would come to in his place, that individual will be able to take up those duties, and he will also be able to fulfill his family duties. But what is the problem with this idea? The replacement officer may not be very familiar of the disaster management efforts. So it may take him 2-3 days to be able to understand what is going on. So that may, at that particular time, till the time he actually knows and he has the knowledge of what is going on, till that time, very likely there would be inefficiency in this whole process. Okay. So that will be the problem. Slowing down of operations during this particular transition time. Finally, coordinate last rites remotely. Now, in this case, what are the pros? Vijay would remain in the district. He would also fulfill his official obligations, and he will also ensure that the mother receives, the whatever can be done remotely for the mother, that is also basically taken care of. What are the cons here? There will always be an emotional dissatisfaction. Now, this would not result into a complete emotional satisfaction. There will be an emotional dissatisfaction. Along with this, the family members may feel neglected. There may be also pressure, the pressure of personal presence will also be there. So that is also an issue, that is also a problem that is there. Okay. Now, coming to the last question which is asked, which is, which of the option do you think would be the most appropriate for Vijay? Which would be the option that would be more appropriate for Vijay? The most appropriate option is what? See, the most ethical course would be that Vijay stayed in the disaster affected district and continue leading the rescue operations, while delegating the last rites trusted to a relative or a community member. That means a combination of the second with that of the fifth option that is there. A combination of that would be the best option. Okay. Now, why is that the reason? First of all, he is a deputy commissioner and he is a central figure to the coordination of all the disaster relief efforts. Okay. So as I said, if suppose this would have been, if this would have been a normal circumstance, in that case, he could always have moved from his, from his office, and he could have requested a leave. But this is a disaster affected time. And during this disaster affected time that is there, there is absolutely even if there is a replacement that is there, which is present during this period, there would be a period of inefficiency. That would also be there. Okay. In fact, when you are writing this, there can be another option that you can suggest, which is that you can request an individual to be placed in his position, and before leaving, The next, maybe a day or two, he continues doing his work, and at the time simultaneously also informing the replacement about the efforts that have been taken, so that during his duty time itself he would be able to do what? He would be able to address the disaster problem, and he would at the same time be able to ensure that the individual who is his replacement for a temporary period will know all the necessary, all the necessary efforts that have been taken, all the rescue efforts, he knows about that. So a transition, during his transition period, he could stay there so as to ensure that the necessary arrangements related to his authority and all of this is done. But again, this will also not be very suitable. The reason is that it requires immediate attention. Okay. So he stays there. His mother's last rite, though emotionally significant, can be performed respectfully by relatives, or for that matter religious authorities with consent. Public service ethics or duty of citizens at the time of crisis is, again, as I said, it is a time of crisis. It is not a time where which is a ordinary circumstance. In an ordinary circumstance, he could have always preferred performance of last rites of his mother over the normal ordinary duties that he's performing. But in this case, it is not an ordinary time, and therefore the crisis that is there, it outweighs his personal obligation. As a civil servant, the values of a civil servant here dictates that he prioritizes his official work at the time of crisis over the over the work that over his personal commitments. Okay. His mother, if alive, might have wanted him to serve the people first. Okay. By staying, he demonstrates exemplary leadership, integrity, and sacrifice, strengthening public trust in administration. If you remember, for those who have attended my classes, and I have always talked about the fact that when it comes to civil servants act as a leader of the community, because people follow what civil servants do. What values are being set by what values are being set by the people, what values are being set by the civil servants are the values that people follow. So in this case, if he performs such an action, he demonstrates. What does he demonstrate? He demonstrates that there are people, and he demonstrates to the society that as a civil servant, he is responsible to performance of his duties over his personal commitments. Okay, so it would be a sign of leadership. Okay, moving on. Moving to the next case study. The second case study that was asked, and the second case study, I will first read the case study. In line with directive principles of state policy enshrined in the Indian Constitution, the government has a constitutional obligation to ensure basic needs, roti, kapda, makan, food, cloth, shelter, for the underprivileged. Pursuing this mandate, the district administration proposed clearing a portion of forest land to develop housing for the homeless and economically weaker section of the society. The proposed land, however, is in an ecologically sensitive zone, densely populated with age-old trees, medicinal plants, and vital biodiversity. Besides, these forests help to regulate microclimate and rainfalls, provide habitat for wildlife, supports soil fertility, and prevent land soil erosion, and sustain livelihoods for tribal and nomadic communities. Okay. In spite of the ecological and social costs, the administration argues in favor of the said proposal, highlighting that this very initiative would bring housing to human rights as a critical welfare priority. Besides it fulfills the government's duty to uplift and empower the poor through inclusive housing development. Housing development. Further, these forests areas have become unsafe due to wildlife, animal threats, and recurring wildlife conflicts. Lastly, clearing forest zones may help to curb antisocial elements allegedly using these as hideouts, thereby enhancing law and order problems. Okay. Now, what are the questions that are there? What are the questions? First question is, can deforestation be ethically justified in pursuit of social welfare objectives like housing for homeless? The first question is asking you what? It is trying that you answer an ethical dilemma. This is what? This is an ethical dilemma. Can deforestation be justified? So here what are we seeing? Deforestation versus housing for poor, or deforestation, ecology versus environment versus, maybe you can say environment versus human rights. Something like that is an ethical dilemma. The first question wants you to answer this very ethical dilemma. Second question, what are the socio-economic, administrative, and ethical challenges in balancing environment conservation with human development? Okay. Third question, what substantial alternatives or policy interventions can be proposed to ensure that both environmental integrity and human dignity are protected? Clear? Now, if you look at this particular dilemma, and for those who have gone through the discussion that we have had, I have always told you about what is the nature of case studies that are asked. And I've always told you that there would always be case studies which would put you in a crisis situation, and they would try and see how do you play a balancing act. This question, or in fact the last question that was there also, was about playing a balancing act. It was about playing a balancing act. Okay. Now in this question, they have explicitly asked you ethically justified. So the first answer to the first question would be, how would you ethically justify it? Now when it comes to ethical justification, what can be the arguments in favor of it? Basic human rights. As I've already told you, this is an ethical dilemma, environment versus human rights. Okay. Second, we have, so if the human rights are aligned with what? The DPSP. Second, providing safety and dignity to the marginalized community. Okay. So if the government decides to build houses and homes for those who are not having them, so it is dignity. It is like providing dignity, and it is also providing safety. Because who are the most impacted? When you look at the society, lack of proper shelter impacts whom? The most vulnerable. You can say the most of the most vulnerable get impacted. Like when it comes to poor, those who live in poverty, and specifically the women and children of those households, they are the most impacted ones. They are vulnerable to what? They are vulnerable to social problems. They are vulnerable to even you can say environmental or geographical issues. That is basically there. they have to very frequently move from one place to the other. They have to move from one place to the other. So that also becomes a challenge, that also becomes a problem. Okay. So by providing housing, safety and dignity of the most vulnerable is ensured. Next, it also help reduce law and order issues and human wildlife conflict. This is a legitimate, no, this is a very legitimate justification that if you clear a patch of land, so the wildlife that is there, it would shift to the neighboring regions or the neighboring forests. So the conflict that is there, the frequent conflict between wildlife and humans, that can be avoided. Okay. Next, what are the arguments against it? The arguments against it is environmental protection is a constitutional mandate, again in DPSP. Forests are irreplaceable ecosystems supporting biodiversity, climate regulation, and livelihood of tribals. Very important, because this is exactly in contradiction to this point. Because in order to provide safety and human rights to or dignity to one, you cannot deprive others of their dignity, like specifically tribals. You cannot deprive them of their dignity because they are dependent upon the forests for their livelihoods. Third, deforestation is a short-term welfare solution. Short-term welfare solution that risks long-term ecological collapse. Now here, there is a dilemma which can be seen here, which is short versus long-term gains. In this case, what we are going to get if we clear out forests is, no, we are going to get short-term gains. But the long-term interests are being compromised with. Okay. Then comes weakening commitment to sustainable development, SDGs. That is also one important aspect here. Next comes ethical balance. How will you balance this? Deforestation cannot be justified as the first resort. So your first answer should not be deforestation. It could be your last answer when nothing is available and only one option remains, that is deforestation, then we can go for it, but not otherwise. Okay, not otherwise. Ethical governance requires solution that meets welfare needs without undermining ecological sustainability, since destruction of forests will be eventually harm the very poor people it intends to help. Clear? So ecological deforestation cannot be considered as an automatic remedy to this problem. It cannot be considered as an automatic remedy. Okay. So first thing that we need to do is we need to look at alternatives. And when we don't have any, only then we can move to such an alternative. Remember, this is a ethical dilemma where you have two very important things, whether it is human rights, whether it is dignity, and it is a value which is at stake in contradiction to the value of environment. Okay. So here there is no best option. But yes, with the case study, looking at the case study, we do understand that there is a possibility that we can choose something else here. Okay. Now, first come to the next question. So this part we have seen. What are the socio-economic, administrative and ethical challenges in balancing environmental conservation with human development? So now it is asking you challenges. What are the challenges? Socio-economic, administrative and ethical challenges. Remember, it's not just ethical challenges. It is socio-economic, ethical as well as the economic, socio-economic, administrative as well as ethical challenge. Three aspects. So we have to address all the three. So what are those challenges? First, if we look at the socio-economic problems, first thing is rising population and urbanization. This is a very important point, because with the rising population, there is more urbanization. With more urbanization, there is more demand for housing. There is more demand for housing. Okay. Secondly, livelihood dependency of tribals, forest dwellers, communities, or no, in the forest. Even if you look at the 2006 rights, in the 2006 law which has been passed by the parliament, it gives forest rights to whom? Scheduled tribes and forest dwellers. Scheduled tribes as well as forest dwellers. Okay. Third, risk of increased inequality if conservation displaces poor community. If suppose there are people who are being displaced and their interests are being sacrificed to meet the interest of some other group, what do you see here? If my interests are being compromised because some other individual's interests are to be upheld, this is inequality. That is the problem. Next, climate change vulnerability for poor if natural buffers are destroyed. What are trees? What are forests? These are natural buffers. This ensures that the kind of problems that may emerge, the kind of problems that may happen because of some natural, maybe some natural causes. Like if you look at those places in India today, like the mountain regions which you will see that it faces heavy tourist footfall. And because of the unsustainable model of tourism, the disasters that happen during maybe monsoons and during that time, that has also increased. The intensity of disasters have also increased. So unsustainable development, unsustainable living, it does have a cost, and that cost is also socio-economic. It's not just environmental. There is a socio-economic cost attached to it as well. Okay. Next comes administrative challenges. Now, what are those? Weak land use planning, absence of affordable housing policies. There is what? There is absence of affordable housing policies and weak land use planning. How to ensure that there is a better use of land? And how to ensure that? That is something which is missing. Secondly, conflicting mandates between forest, housing, tribal welfare and revenue department. They have contradicting mandates. On one hand, forest is to be protected, but housing for poor is to also be taken up. Now, where will we have land for it? There is a conflict that is there. Then comes tribal welfare, but revenue. So if you are taking up tribal welfare, which means you are allowing maybe the tribals that are there, you are allowing them to use forest and accordingly take up their revenue, accordingly they take up their livelihood. It is in contradiction to what? It is in contradiction to the revenue department's objectives. Why? Because they would like that people using resources will pay taxes for it, but the tribals may not. So there is a conflicting mandate which is prominently seen here. Next comes corruption and misuse of forest clearance processes. Corruption has always been one of the most important challenges. Next comes difficulty in rehabilitating both displaced tribals and relocated homeless groups. Relocated homeless groups. Okay. So difficulty in rehabilitating both the displaced tribals. So if tomorrow, look at the case study. What is it saying? You have to create what? You have to create housing for those who are homeless. But what about those individuals who are residing in that area? So if you are clearing out forests, you are settling some individuals, on the other hand you are displacing others. You are displacing others. That is also a problem here. Then comes ethical challenges, human rights versus environmental rights. I've already told you. Second, intergenerational justice. Now, intergenerational justice I talked about in the first part of our discussion also. Intergenerational justice that is there. What is the problem with this idea? If there is an overuse of resources, which means those resources would not be available in sufficient quantity adequately for those who are what? For those who are living in, maybe the next generation, maybe after that. So that becomes a problem. Third, risk of majoritarian bias. Majoritarian bias means such decisions that are to be taken, such decisions are likely to be beneficial for a certain group of people, and very likely those group of people are in populational majority. So that can also happen, where marginalized tribal voices are ignored in the name of welfare. Next, challenges of inclusive decision making. Inclusive decision making, balancing interest of homeless, tribals and environment. Balancing that. That is also a problem. Okay. So these are the challenges that are there. Now, come to the third question. What substantial alternative or policy interventions can be proposed for ensuring that both environmental integrity and human dignity are protected? How can you ensure that you can solve this ethical dilemma in this very situation? Okay. So what could be the answer for that? Very simple. First, sustainable land use planning. Second, eco-friendly housing solutions. Eco-friendly housing solutions like creating, or you can say even creating a disaster resistance or resilience. Clear? That is also there. You will also find that tribals have, in India, some groups, some parts that are there of tribals, they have mastered. What? They have mastered this very art of sustainable living. We can look at those practices and adopt those practices as well. Okay. Then comes community centric approach. Take up that approach which is community centric. Which is community centric. What does that mean? Being a community centric approach. That means when you are taking up policies, involve those who are the most important stakeholders. In this case, it would be the tribals, it would be the local communities. Involve them. Okay. Housing schemes should not result into displacement of tribals. One very important aspect. You have to make a policy or policy intervention where you can always suggest that providing human rights to one community should not result into depriving those rights with the other community. That should not happen. Then comes policy interventions like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana with clear environmental safeguards. Very important, there should be environmental safeguards that are there. Promoting land pooling models and public-private partnership for affordable housing. Then comes creating green zones around housing projects like for climate resilience. That can also be done. And finally, innovative solutions like GIS based land mapping. This is a initiative which the government has taken up. If you know about the Swamitwa scheme, how GIS based land mapping, etc., use of drones, etc., is being done. Identify safer zones for resettlements. Promote eco villages combining sustainable livelihood with housing. I told you about how tribals have mastered this art. We can actually learn that and integrate it in as a part of our policies. Then comes incentivize urban renewal and rehabilitation for unused urban lands for EWS housing. That means those lands which are unused urban lands, that can be, where you do not necessarily, have problems related to environment, that can also be done. Okay, moving on. Coming to the third case study. What is the third case study? The third case study says Subhash is secretary in the PWD state government. In the state government, he is a senior officer known for his competence, integrity, and dedication to work. He enjoys the trust and confidence of ministers in charge of PWD and program implementation. As a part of his job profile, he is responsible for policy formulation, execution of projects relating to infrastructure initiatives in the state. Besides, he oversees the technical and administrative aspects relating to planning, designing, construction, etc. Subhash's minister is an important minister in the state, and significant growth in urban infrastructure development and road network has been registered during his tenure. He is very keen for launching of ambitious road construction project in the near future. Subhash is in regular touch with the minister and is working various modalities for road construction project. Regular meetings, interactions, and presentation is made by him to the minister before a formal public announcement of the project is made by the minister. Subhash's only son Vikas is in real estate business. His son from his own source is aware that a mega road project is on avail. An announcement in this regard is expected anytime. He is very keen to know from his father the exact location of the upcoming project. He knows that there would be a quantum jump in the prices of the land at the proposed location. Buying land at this stage is at cheaper prices would pay him rich dividends. He is pleading to him, that is his father, day in and day out to share him location of the proposed project. He assured him that he would handle the matter discreetly, as it would not attract any adverse notice as he is in a normal course. He keeps on buying lands as a part of his business. He feels pressurized because of constant pleading by his son. Another significant aspect of the matter pertained to extra undue interest in the above project by the minister of the PWD. His nephew was also having big infrastructure project company. In fact, the minister has also introduced his nephew to him and indicated to him to take care of his nephew's business interest in the forthcoming projects. The minister encouraged him to act fast in the matter, as early announcement and execution of a mega road project would enhance his status in the party as well as public life. Now you can see this is a situation where there is a dilemma again. Now this time the dilemma is not organizational. More appropriately, it is personal. But yes, there is an organizational dilemma because the minister is also a stakeholder, but more of a personal dilemma is there. Okay. Now discuss the ethical issues involved in the case. The first question, ethical issues. Second, critically examine the options available to Subhash in the above situation, which means writing both pros and cons. And third, which of the above would be the most appropriate and why? That means which step would be the most appropriate and why would that be considered as a most appropriate step? Okay. Now let's answer them one by one. First, looking at the ethical issues that are involved? See, first, it is conflict of interest. Obviously, there is a conflict of interest involved. Now, conflict of interest, can anyone tell me what is the way to address conflict of interest? What do you think? What is a way to address conflict of interest? As per our discussions, can anyone tell me what is the way to address conflict of interest? How do we address conflict of interest? How do we address conflict of interest? How do we address conflict of interest? Anyone who could tell me this? What is the way to address conflict of interest? We have, in discussion of the probity topic, we have seen this, that conflict of interest is one of the principles that has to be taken, or management of conflict of interest is one of the principles that is there. So in this case, conflict of interest has to be handled with transparency, and also to ensure that the decision making that is there is not done by the individual who is in that conflict of interest. Okay, that is how we handle conflict of interest. Through transparency, everyone should know this, and the individual should not be allowed to take decisions. So we have to accordingly shape our answer. Okay, conflict of interest. Secondly, integrity and impartiality of a civil servant, because here we see that the integrity of a civil servant is at stake. Integrity of civil servant is at stake, because if the civil servant decides to inform either the minister and or the minister's nephew more appropriately, or for that matter, if he informs that to his son related to the project, he is actually violating the impartiality as well as his integrity. Okay. Thirdly, transparency versus nepotism, because on one hand, transparency is important. On the other hand, this would result into, if there is any favor that the civil servant or the minister does, it is against the principle, and therefore it is nepotism. Okay. Next comes rule of law and political pressure. Rule of law. What is rule of law? Rule of law is that in this particular case, the value of anonymity should be upheld. But there is also political pressure. Why? Because the minister has specifically asked that the nephew that is there, his nephew and the business of his nephew, which is that of real estate development, should be taken care of. So that is also the case here. Accountability and public trust. Because if such information is leaked and the benefit of that information is to a few number of individuals, that is an encroachment of public trust. This is an encroachment of public trust. So that is not something which should basically happen here. Okay. Next, personal versus professional ethics. Obviously, emotional pressure is there, but also professional ethics dictates that he works anonymously. So this is basically the ethical issues that are involved here. Now, when we look at the next part, that is what are the options that are available. Option 1, to share information with the son. What are the pros? The son gets financial benefit. Family, there is no family pressure. What are the problems? It is an abuse of power. It is a breach of integrity. It's like insider trading. It's one of the, you can say it's a violation of the Prevention of Corruption Act. Okay. Second is to accommodate minister's nephew in the project. What would be the pros here? Obviously, there would be pros like there would be a goodwill and benefit that would be achieved for the political boss. there would be a very smooth administrative life because he's an important minister. That is what's mentioned. But what are the cons? Again, violation of transparency and fairness. There would be poor quality infrastructure. Why? Because he's minister's son, there is no accountability there. So that can also be a problem. Corruption charges, undermines public trust. Subhash's reputation is also at stake because see, the people that he is working with, they know that there are certain specific information which potentially can come very handy to the minister or Subhash's son. So it is likely to have a impact on the career or the kind of reputation that he has related to the organization. Third, resist both pressure and maintain integrity. That means that obviously here there are positives involved, and the positives would include what? The positives would include things like impartiality, fairness, integrity, merit-based, safeguarding public interest. You can quote all the values that we have discussed as a part of our discussion in the topic values of a civil servant, foundational values, and you can say that all of this gets upheld here. Then comes it. What are the problems? The problems is that it is going to have impact on his personal relationship, and it is also going to have an impact politically. There is also going to be an impact there as well. Next comes escalate the matter, seek institutional safeguard. Institutional safeguard. Now, what is meant by institutional safeguard? By maybe referring the matter to the head of the organization, the administrative head of the organization. If not the administrative head of the organization, maybe even referring the matter to his superior in the hierarchy, that is going to either the secretary or the chief secretary of the state. That can be done. What are the pros? Decision making will be on record. Why? Through file noting. That means everything will be recorded. Now, what is the principle of management of conflict of interest? I said transparency. You can see here transparency. Secondly, suggest formation of an independent tender committee. That means to ensure that there is no problem with this whole process. A very good step that could be taken is that if you allow the decision to be taken up by a committee rather than himself, because that is how we manage conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, you have to ensure transparency and you should not be involved in decision making. That's the best way to handle conflict of interest, and you can see that is how it is basically being taken up. What is the problem? There may be issues related to bureaucratic friction, may antagonize political leadership, that may have a problem. Recuse for decision making. That is how you manage conflict of interest. Don't take your decision. Either allow the organization to take the decision through a committee system, or simply recuse yourself here because there may be some conflict of interest that is involved. What we did show? Integrity, direct involvement in any kind of favoritism. It is also like an insurance that is there to the integrity, or for that matter, the reputation of the individual. But what are the cons? It may be looked at as evading responsibility. It may be looked at that, the individual is evading responsibility. Or for that matter, it may not always be feasible. Because see, it may so happen that you don't do this, but someone else in your position, whoever comes in your position as a decision maker, may help the minister out. So this is not always the solution. Okay, sometimes this is not the solution. Now the question is, what exactly would be the most appropriate course of action? So the most appropriate course of action is that you choose option 3 with option 4. What are those options? You can see, as I've already told you, transparency, avoid taking decisions. Secondly, resist political pressure and maintain integrity. When you involve both of this, you add both of this. है ना? You can do what? You can add both of this. Because this is the best way to handle any conflict of interest like situations. This can be handled here. You can see here. What can Subhash do? First point, Subhash must refuse sharing of information with his son. Why? Because it may result into a wrong precedent. Now, anyone who comes in his position, replaces him, may do the same. Secondly, he should also not favor the minister's nephew, instead push for a more transparent, competitive bidding in accordance to the procurement rules. If he also does what? Keeps file noting. That means every act and the basis of the decision that has been taken, if it is duly noted, what happens? That ensures that he is protected from any undue political pressure. If the pressure escalates, that means if there is more pressure by the minister, then what can happen? Then he can go to the higher authorities. Okay. Ethical justification. There is no need to discuss this. You already know how I have justified this very idea. Okay. Moving on. Next, let's discuss the next case study. The fourth case study. Rajesh is a Group A officer with 9 years of service. He is posted as administrative officer in an oil public sector undertaking. As an administrative officer, he is responsible for managing and coordinating various administrative tasks. To ensure smooth functioning of office, he also manages office supplies, equipments, etc. Rajesh is now sufficient senior and is expecting his next promotion in JAG, that is junior administrative scale, in the next 1 or 2 years. He knows that the promotion is based on an examination of ACR, that is annual confidential report or performance report, of the last 5 years of an officer by a DPC. DPC is Departmental Promotion Committee. And an officer lacking requisite grading of the ACR may not be found fit for the promotion. So if someone has some problems with his confidential report, then he will not be given that promotion. Consequence of losing promotion may entail financial and reputational loss and setback for his career progression. Though he also puts his best effort in official discharge of his duties, yet he is unsure of assessment of his superior officer. He is now putting extra effort so that he gets a thumping report at the end of the financial year. As administrative officer, Rajesh is regularly interacting with his immediate boss, who is the reporting officer for writing his ACR. One day he calls Rajesh and wants to buy computer-related stationery on priority from a particular vendor. Rajesh instructs his office to initiate action for procuring these items. During the day, the dealing assistant brings an estimate of rupees 35 lakhs, recovering all stationery items from the same vendor. It is noticed that as per delegated financial powers, as provided in the general financial rules, as applicable in the organization, the expenditure for office item exceeding 35 lakhs requires sanction of the next higher authority, boss that is in the case. Rajesh knows that immediate superior would expect all these purchases should be done at his level and may not appreciate such a lack of initiative on his part. During discussion with office, he learns that a common practice of splitting an expenditure where large order is divided into a series of small ones is followed to avoid obtaining sanctions from higher authority. This practice is against the rules and may come to the adverse notice of audit. Rajesh is perturbed. He is unsure of taking decisions in this matter. Now, what are the questions? What are the options available to Rajesh in the above situation? What are the ethical issues involved in this case? Which would be the most appropriate option for Rajesh and why? Okay. These are basically the questions that are there. Okay. Actually, if you look at this particular case study, this case study is also based on the Delhi Chief Minister's residence case, where when it was being renewed. So in that case, there were a lot of purchases which was done, and the purchases was done within the limit of 1 CR. Because 1 CR, if the limit is 1 CR or more, in that case you have to go to the concerned officer, and accordingly there would be a file that would go to the lieutenant governor, and only then it would be sanctioned. In order to address this, they did what? They took this up by either renewing the tenders continuously. First it was some amount, then it was some amount, and they also did what? They also came up with the administrative officials involved. They came up with a mechanism that if the purchases are below 1 CR, if it is below 1 CR, then there would be some specific, they don't need to take that sanction from the lieutenant governor. This was the whole idea. So it is somewhat based on that very concept. Okay. Thank you, Shipra. Now, let's first answer what are the options available with Rajesh in the above situation. Now, if we talk about the options that are available, see, first is follow the reporting officer's expectations, which is what? Split the order. Split the order. That is the first step that can be taken. Second is seek proper sanction of the superior as per the financial rules. Third is to negotiate with the vendor to reduce the order size below 30 lakhs. Fourth, to take approval from the boss indirectly by informing him discreetly. And fifth, to raise the issue with vigilance or audit proactively. Okay. Now, if the first option is done and it is created below, under 30 lakhs, then he does not need to go to the higher officer. He can approve it by himself. Seeking proper sanctions, this would mean what? This would mean he has to go to his boss and he has to inform him about such expenditures. It may so happen that there may be, because of some reasons, a negative report written by his officer for him. Negotiate with the vendor. Take approval of boss indirectly. So rather than going with the file, informally informing the boss and accordingly making arrangements. And finally, raising the issue of vigilance, etc. Okay. This is the first question. So these are the options. Second, what are the ethical issues involved in this case? What are the ethical issues? So what are the ethical issues involved? See, integrity versus conformity. If you do what is the right thing, it may be complicated, but it will uphold integrity. In this case, either you can choose convenience or conformity over integrity. That is one problem. Second, compliance with law versus convenience, as I've already told you. Third, there is a conflict of interest. Why? His personal interest, which is his promotion, versus his public duty. Then comes transparency and fairness. This is also an issue. If there is proper transparency maintained, if there is proper fairness maintained or not. And finally, professional courage. Does he have the moral and professional courage to seek sanction and doing the right thing? Though it is inconvenient, though it may have some personal cost, but does he have the courage to do it? That is also at stake here. Okay. Coming to the last, which would be the most appropriate option for Rajesh and why? Now, the problem is not about choosing the option here. The problem is whether you are able to properly articulate why should one go for that very action or not. That is something which is there. Okay. Most appropriate option. First, the option of what? Financial rules. So you can obviously go for option 2 along with option 4. Explain the boss diplomatically. Justification, general financial rules. Rajesh cannot approve such an expenditure. Splitting is disallowed, so that may result into disciplinary proceedings. That should not happen. If he succumbs to pressure, it is going to it is going to damage his integrity. It is going to damage his integrity. By politely informing the boss that sanctions are required under the rules, Rajesh shows both professionalism and loyalty to the system and will strengthen his, if he does the right thing, it is very likely to strengthen his image in front of the boss. Negotiating reduction of quantity, that is option 3, but it is not, it is artificial, it may not necessarily meet what official needs are, so that may become a problem. Whistleblowing, it is the last option. Why? Because in this case, nothing wrong has actually happened. There is a technical error that has emerged, but there is otherwise nothing wrong which has been done either by Rajesh or by the boss till now. Okay? Ethical, rational, upholding integrity, accountability and rule of law. Why you should be doing this? Because this is upholding of integrity, accountability and rule of law. It is going to protect public money, ensure audit compliance, avoid misuse of authority. To demonstrate moral courage as essential quality for a public servant. All of this is something which is shown in this, in this option that Rajesh is likely to take. Okay. So this is basically the 4th question. Now let's move on to the 5th case study. MGNREGA, which was earlier called as the National Rural Employment Scheme, it is an Indian social welfare program that is aimed at fulfilling the right to work provisions made in the Constitution. MGNREGA was launched in 2006 under the rural employment sector by the Ministry of Rural Development. Main objective of the program is to give legal guarantee of wage employment to the adult member of rural household who are willing to do unskilled manual labor work subject to a maximum of 100 days per year for every household. Every rural household has the right to register under the scheme. Job cards are issued to the registered job card holders. They can seek employment. State government shall pay 25% of minimum wages for the first 30 days as compensatory daily unemployment allowance to the families and of wage for remaining period of the year. MGNREGA work was undertaken by various gram panchayats. Okay, So till this particular point, there is only an explanation of what MGNREGA is and what are the basic mechanisms through which the MGNREGA is implemented. Okay, now comes the real situation. You have been appointed as an administrator in charge of the district. You have been given the responsibility of monitoring MGNREGA work undertaken by various Gram Panchayats. You are also given the authority to give technical sanctions to all MGNREGA workers. In one of the panchayats in your jurisdiction, you notice that your predecessor has mismanaged the program in terms of, first, money not dispersed to actual job seekers. Second, muster rolls of laborers are not properly maintained. Third, mismatch between work done and payment made. Fourth, payments made to fictitious person. Fifth, job cards were given without looking into the needs of the person. Sixth, mismanagement of funds to the extent of siphoning of funds, corruption means. And then seventh, approved work that never existed. Approved work that never existed. Clear? These are what? These are all the specific, these are all the specific, you can say, mismanagement that has been done by someone who was in your office preceding you. Okay. Now, what are the questions? What is your reaction to the above situation? And how do you restore the proper functioning of MGNREGA program in this regard? Second, what actions would you initiate to solve the various issues listed above? And third, how would you deal with the above situation? Now, this is a very, very important case study. And all those who are going to appear for the next examination, prepare a case study like this, because the manner in which this case study has been asked, my guess is that this kind of a case study related to a policy and a program may become a trend in the UPSC. Okay, it is going to become a trend in the UPSC. Okay. First, Simar Kashyap, thank you. Rajiv, there are Zoom meetings held for the optional. Okay, there are Zoom meetings. In fact, last Wednesday itself, that is this last Wednesday, I held a Zoom meeting for optional. Okay, I did hold a Zoom meeting for optional last Wednesday itself. Okay, so follow the Telegram group. In the Telegram group, you are likely to get any such information. Okay. So these are specifically the questions. Now, the first question is what? What is your reaction to the above situation? And how do you restore the proper functioning of the MGNREGA program in this regard? Okay. Thank you, Rajiv. So, what is the reaction? See, what is the immediate reaction? See, there are so many irregularities that has happened. There are so many irregularities that have happened in this situation that it becomes absolutely mandatory to take some immediate actions. Okay. So what has happened? See, there is a deep concern. There is a mismanagement of MGNREGA. Not just financial irregularities, but there has been a direct violation of right to work of the workers. You will have to write that when we are talking about right to work, it is implementation of constitutional values of justice. And when that is misused in any manner, you are violating actually the constitution. So you're not just violating a law, you're not just violating a rule, you are in its spirit violating the constitution. Okay, so you have to write that. Then comes, what are the ethical concerns? Misuse of public funds has happened, which means there is a breach of trust, social justice, and also constitutional morality. There has also been a breach of constitutional morality here. There is no doubt here that there is a breach of constitutional morality. Okay, as I told you, it's a violation of constitutional values. Now, what can be done? The first thing that is required is to ensure transparency and accountability in the implementation. Secondly, MGNREGA program has social audit inherent in the law. So, strengthening of the social audit mechanism and participation of the people, that becomes the next point. Third, use of e-governance or digitalization. Monitor the muster rolls. That means who are the people who are who are the people who are participating there. You have to muster that roles. You have to actually look into that. Then comes ensuring payments, job cards, prevalent leakages, that needs to be digitalized. Then comes reinforced check and balance. How? Between panchayats, district administration and state government. There needs to be a check and balance that needs to be ensured. Okay. So these are the immediate steps that can be taken. Next. What are the actions that you would initiate to solve various issues listed above? What are the actions that can be done here? First, money not disbursed to actual job seekers. That is the first problem. So what can be done? Ensure DBT. So direct benefit transfer is a very important point in order to address the leakages that are there. Okay. So DBT. Audit pending payments and release due immediately. So all the pending payments that are there, all the dues that are there, it has to be released instantaneously. It should be released instantaneously. Then comes muster rolls not properly maintained. So what can be done? So those people who are actually working, whether they are doing it or not, whether they are just enrolled but they are not actually doing the work. In order to check that, biometric attendance system, and there could be a cross check related to attendances like field inspections. In this case, field inspections becomes absolutely mandatory. So that needs to be done. Mismatch between work done and payment made, physical verification of the work, all the works that have been completed. Then geotagging of work, use of e-governance again. Payment made to fictitious persons, verified Aadhaar verified job cards, deleting fake job cards, and also taking up a ground inquiry into the matter. Then comes job cards given without assessing needs. That needs to be again taken care of. So review the criteria, cancel ineligible job cards, because it says there are a few specific provisions that are mentioned. Who can be given, who is eligible. So if as the case study already tells you who can be eligible, so all those who are ineligible needs to be weeded out of the process. Mismanagement and siphoning of funds, there needs to be audit. There needs to be vigilance inquiries. There needs to be those officials who are the ones who have taken up that, they need to be held accountable for their actions. Initiating disciplinary and criminal actions for those who are at fault. Then comes approved work that never existed. So if there are work which is being done but that has never existed. So what can be done for that? Conduct spot inspections. Along with it, stop payments for such projects, recover misused funds, blacklist the contractors if they are involved. Okay. What do you see this? Why did I say, when you look at this particular case study, what do you see here? One thing that becomes absolutely clear when we look at such a case study is that this involves complete administrative knowledge of how things are being or to be implemented. So how to address this? How you can develop this skill, that if such policies and such programs specifically are being asked and you are being told to take up steps related to it, the The one of the best way to address this concern would be what, one of the best way to address this concern would be that if you are reading your newspapers and all those current news that is there related to those policies and programs which are in news because of some kind of corruption or no mismanagement, maladministration, be very careful in reading those news. You have to be very, very careful in reading them. And while you are reading it, look at what are the steps that are being taken up. When you are in a habit of reading those steps, when you are writing your mains examination, you are likely to, write the steps which should be taken. Without administrative knowledge and without practical, when you have the capability to think practically, if you don't have the capability to think practically, very unlikely that you are able to address these questions. Okay. Come to the last question. What would you deal, how would you deal with the above situation? Okay. So how this is to be dealt with? See, corrective actions. What are the corrective actions? Transparency, Gram Sabha, social audit. Clear? This is basically what? This is basically the corrective action part. Then comes the accountability part. So what is the accountability part? Take disciplinary action against officials, lodge FIRs in case of fraud, ensure zero tolerance towards corruption. Clear? Systematic reforms, IT, social audit, capacity building. That is basically the reforms. And ensuring ethical leadership. By doing what? Setting an example of integrity and fairness. Refusing to overlook past irregularities. Ensuring that those who are the most vulnerable, they have faith in the system. As well as communicating openly with the villagers about the corrective actions that need to be taken. Clear? These are the steps which can be taken in your position to address the problem. Okay. Coming to the last case study. Ashok is divisional commissioner of one of the border districts in the northeast state. A few years back, military has taken over the neighboring country after overthrowing the elected civil government. Civil war situation is prevailing in the country, especially in the last 2 years. However, internal situation further deteriorated due to rebel groups taking over control of certain populated areas near our borders. Due to intense fight between military and rebel groups, civilian casualties have increased manifold in recent past. In the meantime, in one night, Ashok got information from local police guarding the border checkpost that there are about 200 to 250 people, mainly women and children, trying to cross over to our side of the border. There is also about 10 soldiers with their weapons in military uniform, part of this group who want to cross over. Women and children are also crying and begging for help. A few of them are injured and bleeding. They need immediate medical care. Ashok tried to contact Home Secretary of the state but failed to do so due to poor connectivity, mainly due to the inclement weather. What are the questions? First, what are the options available to Ashok to cope up with the situation? Second, what are the ethical and legal dilemmas faced by Ashok? Third, which of the options do you think would be more appropriate for Ashok to adopt and why? And fourth, in the present situation, what are the extra precautionary measures that can be taken by the border guarding police in dealing with soldiers in uniform? Okay, These are basically the 4 questions. Again, 4 questions, 5 marks each. Starting with, what are the options available to Ashok? So options available, first is allow the people to come in, cross the line into Indian territory, including the soldiers. Second is allow only women and children and civilians to cross, deny entry to the armed soldiers. Third, allow civilians to cross but disarm and detain soldiers before granting entry. Fourth, deny entry to all, including women and children, until instructions are received. And the last is providing temporary humanitarian assistance at the border itself while awaiting further instructions. Every of this point may have some positives, but it also has some negatives. Like, if you allow, you are going to provide them, it's a humanitarian step. But such a kind of an entry will not be considered legal. Second, if you allow women and children, civilians, but not armed soldiers, so it becomes what? It becomes vulnerable. They are very vulnerable because rebels that are there, they might not necessarily leave them. Then comes allowing civilians but disarming the soldiers. It may so happen that they may not agree to this. So the soldiers that are there, they may not agree to this. And in this case, suppose this is a decoy, that may also be a problem. Finally, deny entry to all. It's not humanitarian. And then providing humanitarian assistance while waiting for further instructions. Okay. These are the specific steps that can be taken, the options that are there. Second, what are the ethical and legal dilemmas faced by Ashok? Now, this is where, what you see here is that generally, whenever we talk about such questions, you will find that most of the times ethics case studies include a lot of questions on ethical dilemmas. What do you see here this time? Only one question has been asked on ethical dilemma. So ethical issues have been asked, but not ethical dilemmas. Okay. This is how UPSC tends to surprise us. We tend to go prepared with something, but what is asked sometimes is something else. Okay. So what are ethical dilemmas? See, ethical dilemmas are what? In this case, humanitarian duty versus national security. Second, immediate relief versus due process. Third is compassion versus responsibility. Clear? Now, again, as I told you, whenever you are writing this, you have to explain it also. So if we say humanitarian duty versus national security, so yes, humanitarian duty is to allow them, but national security is 200 to 250 people are there. What about if some individuals, they are in guise of of civilians, but they are not actually civilians. They are a threat to national security. Immediate relief versus due process. Due process is you have to wait. There is a process through which you can enter the country, which is going through visas and all of this. Compassion and responsibility. Compassion here is allow them. Responsibility is you are the one who is responsible for guarding that very border. Okay. What are the legal dilemmas? The legal dilemmas here are firstly related to international laws. Now, India is not a signatory to the Geneva Convention, which allows for refugees. Okay. Second, domestic laws. Any individual who has illegally entered into India has broken the law. He has broken the law. She has broken the law. It doesn't matter which conditions they have entered India into. Thirdly, state responsibility. What is that? Unauthorized asylum may cause issues related to diplomatic fallout with the neighboring country. Even right now, if you look at this case study, it's more like a Bangladesh kind of a situation. So in Bangladesh, this is basically what is going on. And that Sheikh Hasina, who has come into India, Bangladesh wants that India should extradite them, no, extradite her. But what is the problem? There is a problem that she is very likely subjected to political persecution. So if India is protecting her, there is a problem related to, there is a problem that is there, okay? Because when it comes to Bangladesh, there may be a diplomatic issue with that, okay? Now, the third question is, what is the most appropriate option available to Ashok and why? So not only mentioning what is the option, but also why. Now, if you look at option 3 upholds the humanitarian solution. That is, allow women, children, and other civilians immediate entry, humanitarian care, disarm, detain, and segregate armed soldiers while informing the higher authority. Okay. What is the justification? Justification is that it upholds humanitarian principle, but it also ensures that security principle is upheld. Why? Because those who are in this very situation, they are armed, they are being done what? They are being segregated and disarmed. Then comes rule of law. Detention of soldiers safeguards India against allegations of harboring armed rebels. Okay, that is also there. Balanced approach because it combines compassion with prudence, avoiding any extreme denial or for that matter what? Unregulated entry. दोनों ही चीजों को ध्यान में रखा गया. That's the best option that is there. And finally, the last is what? In the present situation, what are the extra precautionary measures taken by the that should be taken by the border guarding police in dealing with soldiers in uniform? What can be done? See, immediate disarmament. All weapons need to be confiscated. Second, separate confinement. Keep them separate. Proper verification, establishing their identity, rank, and even affiliations. Coordination with the armed forces as well as the Ministry of Home Affairs. Preventing infiltration risks. How? By ensuring no rebel terrorist elements they mix with the refugee population, as well as keeping records. Proper documentation, etc. Clear? Again, a more it's a more you can say it's a more administrative kind of a perspective. Okay, this is basically the case studies. Okay, so there were 6 case studies. We looked at 6 case studies. See, I have just answered that part of the case study which it has been asked directly as a question. Now, some of you are those individuals who have attended my case study classes. You know that there is a structure that I follow in how to address case studies. So when you are writing such case studies, whenever you are writing such case studies, obviously you should be practicing this. So go back. Now you have a good idea. You have a brief idea as to how to address such case studies. Go back, take some time, and try and write all the case studies. And when you're practicing these case studies, obviously you have some of you have this, you know how to proceed about it, but you have to also take into account what exactly needs to be done, with respect to writing an subject matter or writing a conclusion. You can add that. Okay, but remember, all of it, it's 20 marks. So you have 250 words. So within the word limit, when I am preparing this, I don't have word limits. So I'm trying to just address it to the best of my capability without adhering to word limit. But you have to adhere to the word limit as well. Okay, so please write it. This would be very helpful. The questions that are asked in UPSC, the trend sometimes tend to No, the trend sometime tends to continue. So for those who are going to appear next year also, this is something which will help you in addressing the case study part. Okay. Yes, there will be an optional video also which will come next week. So most probably Thursday or Friday, you can expect first paper video, and then the next day, the second paper video, you can expect that. Okay. That is it for today. Thank you everyone.